Hello guys, welcome back. So in the last video we had imported our ball mesh inside the Godot project, and in this video we are going to start building our functionality around it. So to explain you better, let's just understand one thing, that let's say this is my computer screen. I mean the screen where the player will be playing the game. So if this is the screen and here let's say we have our ball in the starting. So the logic says that when the game starts, the ball will be there in the center and the player has to press space bar in order to make the ball jump and to keep the ball in the screen. And if the ball leaves the screen out, so it will be a game over for him. So what is happening exactly? So let's say in real life also, if you leave a ball in between in the air with no support and nothing, so obviously a force of gravity will work and the ball will fall down. Okay. So similarly in our the virtual world, so this 3D engines, this 3D game is like a virtual world. So here also we do have some tools and methods through which we can replicate the uh, what is happening in the real world, like the 3D physics, the movement and so on and so forth. So like that we can apply some real physics in the virtual world as well. So what we can do is we can tell the Godot engines that hey, this ball is like a real physical ball. And so what the engine will do, the engine will basically apply a force of gravity on the ball by default. Okay. And by default what will happen is that the ball will tend to fall down and it will go off the screen. Okay. So our one part of logic is covered there. Now for the next part, what we have to do is that we have to constantly check that if the player presses the space key, so then we have to apply a upward force on the ball in order to make the ball jump, so that the player can strategically press the space key in order to keep the ball in the screen, within the screen. So if even if the ball goes beyond the screen in the upward direction, there will be a game over, and if the ball goes beyond the bottom direction of the screen, still it will be a game over. So that is the core logic of the game. So let us just write it down, that let's just break the requirements into two parts. So for the first part, the requirement is ball is should act as a real ball in physical environment. Okay, so that our first part, where we have to make the ball such that the ball should fall if no forces is applied. Then we have to constantly check for player inputs. If key if key space is pressed, then make the ball jump in upward direction. Okay. So that's how we are going to break this thing into two parts. One is the ball applying as a physical object, and then the second thing is listening to the player input and applying a force based on whenever the key is pressed. So now let's go back to the editor, and here I have this ball. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click plus in order to create a new scene. And for this, let's just say that it is going to be a 3D object. Now I could have gone ahead and clicked on 3D scene. Okay, but in our case this is not the thing, because what we have to do is we have to tell Godot that whatever that node is that is going to hold the mesh of the 3D ball, it is a rigid body node. So what is a rigid body? So basically a rigid body is basically a class which tells Godot engine that it whatever that is contained within this node has to be applied on a real physics force. So whatever in a real life physics, whatever forces and things, gravity and those things are there, will be applied here. So as the base node we are going to select rigid body 3D. Now that we have added rigid body 3D, right away you will see this node configuration warning. So basically it has some dependencies. So if there is a real life object is there, then obviously that objects has to do some collisions because the object exists in the world. So it has to have a collider defined. So as of now we don't have any collider defined, so that's why it's throwing that warning message, but just ignore it on as of now. Now that our rigid body is there, let us just drag and drop our actual ball mesh. So what we can do is we can simply drag and drop it inside the environment. So now you can see right away within this rigid body, the ball mesh has been added. And since I had named the 3D mesh properly, the naming convention is also coming nicely here. So now I'll just expand this transform, and as you can see here, the X, Y, and Z. So these are basically the transform points where in this virtual world where exactly this 3D mesh is there. So it is, you can see obviously the the ball is not lying in the origin as of now, it is a little bit offset. So I'll just make sure everything is zeroed out to remove any offset. So now our ball is lying exactly in the center, and that's what we want because we are creating an independent functionality. So we later on we have to merge this node in the other scenes. So that is what we will see in the later videos. So for now, our ball is there and rigid body we have added. So now it is finally time to define a collider for it. So a collider is nothing but basically a node which defines the interaction area of any 3D or 2D object. So we'll be basically going to this collision shape 3D, and I will add that, and right away you'll see that now that a rigid body has a collision shape, so the node warning has gone. But in the collision shape I am getting a node warning, and basically it's complaining that hey, you have added the 3D collision shape, but you have not defined any shape. So basically the collision shape is asking you to define a shape. Why like how I have to define the collision? So in the inspector, by selecting the collision shape 3D object and node, if I come to the inspector, from here I'll select this shape field, and from here, since my model is completely round, it's a sphere, so I'll use this new sphere shape 3D. So now I'll press 1 on my numpad to go to the front mode, and right away you'll see this ring. This ring basically is defining the area, how like this much is the area that is going to be as a collider. But we want to make sure that this area is basically this. If I set it to up, let's say if I set it to this, so basically now what I have done is I have defined this ring, I mean this area. You can see if I expand it more, you will see now that this is the area that is defining the collision shape. So obviously I want to make the collision such that only the area that is the ball is there, my 3D mesh, only till that area the collision should be there. So I'll just make it a little bit smaller, just to fit the size. So that's how we have defined our ball mesh, and now our node is completely ready. So I'll press Ctrl S to save it. So now this one, for this, see basically in the game, whenever you are making any complex or any simple game, you have to create different functionalities and then join it together to make a fully functional game. So now this ball that I have just defined, this is not a complete scene. This is basically just a component of my entire game. Okay, so I'll create a new folder here and I'll name it components, and within this one I'll save this as ball. Let's say, okay, let's just say ball. So now my scene is saved with the name of ball, and this is one is the component. So let's say let's create a new tab, and over here I'll just select the default node. So this is going to be my main scene. Okay, so I'll go to the scenes folder, and here I'll just say main and I'll save it. So basically I'm defining that this is the main scene that will be loaded whenever the game is played. So if I hit on play right now, the project will ask me that hey, there is no scene that is selected as the main scene. So I have to select one scene which will be loaded like a default scene, okay, which will be loaded first. So since this main scene tab is currently active, so I'll just select, I'll say select current. So it will basically select the current scene as the main scene, and it will launch the game window. So right away you will see that there is nothing is coming, and that's absolutely fine because in my scene I have only one node. Okay. So now how do I instantiate my ball scene inside this? So there is mainly two ways to do this. One is basically you can go over to this main scene and you can click on this chain icon. So basically this is asking you to instantiate a child scene. So here I'll click on this chain, and from here I will select this mesh ball, sorry, components ball.ts tscn. This is basically a scene format of Godot. So I'll click on open, and now you can see that my ball is added. So I'll press Ctrl S, and now I'll hit play. So now you'll see that there is nothing is coming still. Why? Because our scene has been loaded, we have added the ball, but we have not defined any camera. So a camera is a very core and crucial component to render whatever your scene is having. So you need to add a camera. So I'll just right click, add a child node, and from here I'll add camera 3D. Now remember, don't add camera 2D because we are working in a 3D game, so we need a 3D node. So we'll add camera 3D over here. So now we we can obviously drag this camera around and set it the whatever the way that we want, but this is not a practical way, because whatever the camera is able to see, we are not able to see that because we are currently in a full viewport mode. So in order to see what the camera is able to view, so what I can do is I can go to this view button, and I can click on two viewports. So now our viewport is split. So I'll just minimize this output button, and now we have two viewports. One is on the top and one is on the bottom. And if your camera node is selected, so you'll get an option to check this preview mode on. So I'll just check this on, and right away you will see that in my bottom viewport, this is my normal viewport, which wherein I can see all the objects, and in the top now I am able to see what my camera is uh, seeing. So here I can adjust the camera angle, I can set the distance whatever the way we want, and then I'll press Ctrl S, and now I'll hit on play again, and right away you'll see the ball is going down. Now the ball is not lighted up properly, and in the scene we can see the ball is coming correct. So these things we will deal in the later video, wherein we'll add some lights in order to make our game look a bit better. So see you in the next one.